Hello, everyone. Lovely to see you. You're very welcome on this, I suppose, autumnal day. The sun is out there to our Midwest Aries webinar, and this is part of our CHIME series. It's Let's Talk Identity and Mental Health Recovery. My name is Margaret Keane, and I'm the Education, Training and Development Officer here at Midwest Aries. Delighted to have you here. Thanks for spending the next hour with us. I'm just going to go through a little bit of housekeeping, the boring bit, just to get that out of the way. First thing is, maybe some of you don't actually know who we are. Maybe you discovered us on Eventbrite, and if you did, you're very welcome. It's lovely to see you. We are the Recovery Education Service here based in the Midwest. So we're part of the mental health service here in the Midwest. So we cover Limerick, Clare and North Tipperary, but we're also a fully hybrid service. So we're online like today. We're also face-to-face in the community. We deliver recovery education twice a week in both acute psychiatric units in Ennis and Limerick. And we have some self-paced courses available as well from our website. So you might want to check that out afterwards. So that's midwestaries.ie. Really, really simple. So today, as I said, we're going to be here for about an hour. We're going to have a panel discussion and we're going to get the conversation started pretty quickly. But one thing we'd love for you to do, this is something we do at all of our webinars, is to get the conversation going from your end too. We love that piece of engagement. The chat function isn't open to you, but what is open is the Q&A. And you'll see there at the bottom of your screen that there is a Q&A button. Just to say hi from Joe has already gone into the chat. So thank you, Joe, for that. Lovely to see you. Joe is great. He's come to several of our webinars and workshops. Lovely to see you. And he says, hi, Margaret and panel. Thanks, Joe. Lovely to have you here. So Joe's basically showed you how it's done. He's done all the work for me. So that's great. So yeah, any reflections or questions, and I will do my utmost to put that to the panel. So yeah, I think that obviously, it's been recorded as well. And this is great because this is the third in our CHIME series. So we've already done Connection and Hope. So do check that out on our YouTube channels if you get a chance, because we had some fantastic conversations around that. Yeah, we will be sending out, anyone who's attended will be sending out the link to the recording of this webinar and also to our podcast as well, the Wellness Panel, where we basically put all of our webinars there as long form podcasts. So what are we doing today? Let's get back to the topic. For those of you who aren't familiar with it, CHIME is what we're looking at. And CHIME is a fantastic framework that really allows us to consider the 5 key ingredients or processes of personal recovery. And the 5 things, really easy to remember: connection, hope, identity, and that's what we're going to be looking at today. And it's that idea of rebuilding a positive sense of self beyond, an illness, a mental health illness, or a mental health challenge. Meaning and purpose, and we'll be looking at that next month. And then finally, empowerment, and we're back here in January to look at that. So that's CHIME. And again, to give you just a very brief, I suppose, background to that, back in 2011, key researchers in the whole area of mental health, Mary Leamy and Mike Slade, did this analysis of, I think there was over 5,000 studies on mental health recovery from a personal perspective. And out of that, and drilling down, these were the 5 key processes or ingredients, if you like, that were mentioned when it came to personal recovery. For me, CHIME is the wheel of personal recovery. That's the way I see it. And it's like the CHIME piece, the connection, hope, identity, meaning and empowerment are like the spokes going out. If one's slightly off, the wheel is going to wobble. That's how I remember it. I'm a visual learner, so that's what helps me. So today, as I said, we're looking at identity. I'm going to invite our lovely panelists to turn on their videos, and I'm going to introduce them one by one, and then we'll get the conversation going. So lovely to see you. Nice smiley faces. So we have, first off, Mike O'Neill, who is the manager here at Midwest Aries, our fearless leader. Great to have you here, Mike. And yeah, just really great to have you part of the conversation. The same with Sylvia Kiely, who is our recovery education facilitator here at Aries. And then we're into 2 lovely people who really support recovery education here in the Midwest, and they've been fantastic supporters of ARIES in particular. I'll go to Áine Frawley first, and she's an occupational therapist with HSE Mid West. But not only that, Áine is also a facilitator with ARIES and has co-facilitated our creativity for wellbeing workshops in the Hunt Museum. So delighted to have Áine with us. And last but by absolutely no means least is Niamh Lowe. And again, you might remember Niamh's been on quite a few of our webinars as well. Great to have Niamh here because she's giving a different perspective. She is Senior Psychologist, Community Mental Health, HSE Mid West. For those of you who are listening to us, it won't mean anything to you, but unfortunately, Niamh can't turn on her her video. Such is the way we have these technological things, but just great to have Niamh here, and I'm so delighted. I think we're going to have a really great conversation. So with that in mind, and I hope I haven't, I hope I've ticked all the boxes there in terms of housekeeping, but let's start with a brief round of introductions, and I'm going to come to all of you, and you can tell me just a little bit about your role, and also in terms of, I suppose, what you hope to bring to the discussion today, or what maybe you want to get out of it. So I'm going to go to Mike first, and then I'll just follow the panelists on the screen. Thanks, Mike.
Yeah, great stuff. Yeah, I'm the manager here in Midwest ARIES, as Margaret has given us the introduction. And I suppose it's the first time where we're doing the CHIME series and we're following through on them all. And I suppose what I love about this is it's not something that's, you could say, is tangible, but it's certainly real. Yeah, and they're like philosophical conversations. And I suppose, and the beauty of it is everybody has a different yeah, version of what it looks like to them. And that's what I'm really excited to hear about here today. And I'll hand you over to Sylvia next there. Thank you.
Great,
Sylvia, if you want to come in there.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Margaret. Hi, everybody. Sylvia, Recovery Education Facilitator. Yeah, like Mike is saying, it's the Chime series. What I do love about it, it has that scope within it to kind of flow out anywhere. And the discussions are always rich as well. And I'm coming, I suppose, from the place as facilitating the workshops within the community settings online and the APUs. But specifically with this one, I think the link to the APUs is so strong and it's so needed as well around the identity piece in the CHIME framework. And like that, our identity is who we are. It's not separate from us. So it is that defining factor of who we are, what we do, how we live. So really, really crucial topic for discussion today. So thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Sylvia, and thanks for sharing that. And again, yeah, I think you're absolutely right in terms of the acute psychiatric unit setting. Identity is something that comes up quite a lot. We'll get into that because I think that's a really interesting piece. Áine, I'll come to you next.
Hello, everybody, and thank you so much, Margaret, for your wonderful introduction. Delighted to be here today. I'm an occupational therapist here in the Midwest on an adult community mental health team. So I usually work with people with what they want to do, have to do, need to be able to do, and how their mental health impacts upon them, potentially being able to do those things. So I'm delighted to share my insight into what I think identity is and potentially how somebody can maybe rediscover their sense of identity through practical strategies. So thanks for having me.
And thanks, Áine. And I love that. And I'd love you to lean into that, the practical strategies piece and that rediscovery piece, particularly when you're emerging from maybe particularly hard times. So great to have that perspective here. And finally, Niamh, we'll come to you next if you want to say hi. And again, your thoughts on today's discussion.
Yeah. And just to say again, apologies, my camera, I can't get it working. But anyway, my voice is here. My voice is added to the conversation. And thank you for inviting me along. It's always lovely to partake in these webinars and discussions. And I've never been part of the Chime series before, but I was in the acute unit in Ennis today and going through a group, and even identity, connect, all of the elements, connection, hope, they're all so relevant and they come up nearly every time in some way within the sessions, regardless of what maybe team we're focusing on. And identity is I think a really interesting one, because I guess a person's relationship and perspective of themselves will change having gone through or going through mental health difficulties. So I'm looking forward to the conversation. So
And
thanks for having me.
And thanks, Niamh. And yeah, obviously second mention of acute psychiatric units already. You can see identity is so important because it speaks to who we are, or who we feel we are, or a sense of loss. So let's get into that. So we know from our workshops, and Sylvia's already kind of alluded to that mental health challenges can often affect how people see themselves. How can someone, do you think, and again, leaning into that practical piece, rebuild or rediscover their sense of identity after a tough time with their mental health? So who'd like to come in on that one? Oh, Sylvia, you want to come in first? That's no problem. Thanks a lot.
Perfect. Yeah, it's a really powerful question. I suppose speaking as well from the experience in recovery education, like integrating those principles of the CHIME framework, they always come in even when we're just looking at exploring, positive self-identity and our sense of self. So yeah, we deliver a workshop entitled My Mental Health, Exploring My Identity. And this workshop, I believe it is very valuable and valid in the psychiatric unit setting. And I suppose it always starts for us in the APU with asking the questions. And the question in that workshop we ask is, when do you feel most like yourself? And even that question alone, it is key because it's probably not a very common question people get asked, put to people within that framework in the psychiatric unit. And the responses that come, they are really indicative of how I think safety, and that is, emotional and environmental safety, they do play a key role in being comfortable to the true self. Um, there was a comment, and I was there gathering recently, and the comment I will draw on from co-production. One person said that I feel like me when I am comfortable in my skin and I do not silence or shrink myself for others. And so that's really, really powerful. We ask that the other question is, well, what diminishes your sense of self? So those two questions together, what I think they really do is to capture for the person, not just a memory, of their positive sense of self, but what can be challenging to that sense of self. And what commonly results as challenges is, negativity, or not being heard or being spoken for, living in what they call like a survival mode. So the answer is, I think, therefore, to support rebuilding or reinventing that sense of self. They're already there within the rooms when we come in and arrive. It's like we're a catalyst to getting that discussion flowing. So it's building on those, I suppose, responses and the discussions. A big one would be positive relationships. We always emphasize as well, that positive relationship with self and the quality of relationships that they have in their life, that they're supportive, that they are uplifting for them, helping them to feel secure. And another one, I suppose, another practical thing to do, but again, coming back to relationship with self and identity, is how to give yourself, I suppose, constant encouragement, and some self-compassion when you are facing that hardship. And again, take time for yourself, take time for your own self-reflection, without expectations of others coming in, because it is you and your own self at the end of the day. And people, I think they also stress, it's having someone to go to, having someone to talk to that will accept them for where they are, who they are, there and then. So
And I
counseling,
think actually, Sylvia,
yeah.
that's really interesting in terms of, obviously that's an acute setting where people are acutely
Mm,
unwell. But
mm,
within that, I think a lot of people even listening here who may never have that
mm,
experience can really it speaks to them as well. I think that's part of the human condition, all the
mm,
things that you mentioned. Um,
definitely. Yeah.
so thank you for sharing that, Sylvia. Mike, I know you want to come in on this one.
Yeah, and I suppose it's kind of to look at when you talk about how can people rediscover or have a sense of identity, because it's life experience gets in the way and something happens, and it does, like, so it can be grief, it can be loss of relationship, loss of job, retiring was something. Somebody came in earlier with a question around that as well and what that looks like. And I suppose if we look then, I suppose, to dig a little deeper, when we look at that, we'll say people who receive a diagnosis, there's a small minority who see that as a positive thing, where this provides clarity and understanding, but also says there is now treatment. But I think the significant majority is it undermines people receiving a diagnosis, and it destroys their sense of identity, or questions their sense of identity. And I suppose the one thing I would say where I've encountered it, particularly we say in the acute settings, is where somebody who is completely, their sense of identity is completely wiped out. And I suppose that's where you can turn that conversation or the narrative or the way of looking at it into an opportunity. Whereas you can say, well, now you have the rest of your life to look forward to, and you have choice, and you can decide, and what would that look like? And that's where you tap into person's strengths or interests, and start with the basics and then build on it from there. So, yeah, so it can be devastating or it can be positive. So but again, and
And
it's more than mental health. It's what happens to people. It's what they experience.
And I love that, Mike, in terms of that hope piece. Again, it's bringing it back to CHIME, that, it's if things happen and it gives you that moment to maybe press pause and reconsider or rediscover something new. I'd be really interested to hear what the audience thinks of that one, and get their thinking on it as well. And just while I'm there, just want to say hi from Marion as well. Marion's again been to lots of our recent workshops. Lovely to see you, Marion. Thanks for coming. So I know I've got Niamh and Áine. I know you both desperate to get in on this. So Áine, I'll come to you first, and Niamh, I'll come to you next if that's okay. So Áine, you first.
Perfect. I just wanted to, chime in there, and kind of reiterate something that Sylvia had said. So, what is identity? It's around what we choose to do and how we do it, and that can, express our identity, our values, our sense of self. Again, it's coming back to what Sylvia had said. It's about that inner reflective work. It's really important. How does a person view themselves? What do they like about themselves? What are their skills and their strengths? It's about looking at their occupations, what maybe was meaningful to them in terms of roles and responsibilities that maybe through their mental health challenges that has, discontinued. Are there things that they would like to look at to start reintegrating into their routine, or are there meaningful roles and responsibilities which they would like to maybe start? I think it's important to note that identity is evolving. I was chatting to Mike earlier, and we kind of discussed that briefly. It's not to, whether it be a setback or you're facing a tough time with your mental health, I think it's really important to practice that piece of self-compassion, and to say there's no final destination or end goal with identity, and it's ever growing, ever changing, ever evolving. So it's to acknowledge that, and not to beat ourselves up too much if we encounter those setbacks. But yeah, I think the reflective work, and even writing down what's meaningful for me, what are some nourishing activities that I enjoy, and maybe what kind of depletes our energy, in terms of things that we choose to do, and maybe it's about putting those to the wayside and continuing on.
And thanks, Áine. And again, just read. I think that's a really positive thing to say, and to actually understand and take on board, is the idea of we're evolving. We're constantly evolving, and being kind to ourselves in that when there may be growing pains. And I think that's a lovely thing to remind people, particularly when they're not well, when and they're seeing themselves reflected in others. And I think, Mike, you kind of you put in as well the kind of stigma, the self stigma as well, that when you have mental health challenges, how you see yourself can change. But that can often be seen in other people, that then you kind of take that on board. But thank you, Áine. That's no, lovely, evolving. Niamh, love to come to you now.
Cool, thank you. Just kind of reiterating a lot of what people have said already. But the piece that kind of came to me as you were asking that question was around that kind of, there can be so much shame, and I suppose shame, self-anger, kind of a lowering of confidence after going through mental health difficulties. And I see that kind of in acute unit, in my work in the community, with myself in personal life. It really impacts your sense of self and how you talk to yourself. And I know it's like that self-talk piece around, what narrative of like what story are you telling yourself about what happened, those mental health difficulties that you've had? How are you framing them? How are you seeing them? How are you seeing yourself in relation to them? And yeah, I often, when I'm talking to people and working with people, would focus on that self-talk piece, because that can really take a battering after going through something like a mental health difficulty or a crisis, or so there may be no one in the environment or externally kind of giving you a hard time for what you've been through. Sometimes, you might be met with a lot of understanding, sometimes not. But how you're talking to yourself about it can really be very negative, and sometimes people aren't even necessarily aware of that self-talk, how negative it has become. And I think it doesn't have to be, super positive and cheerleading yourself, and but even kind of bringing it back a little bit more to neutral. Do you know, what am I doing now? Yeah, I went through a really difficult time, and I've, here I am. I'm doing my best in this moment.
So Niamh, how do you shift that perspective then? How do you shift that perspective away from that negative self-talk? I know you're
I
saying that
get,
putting it into neutral, but like
yeah,
refocusing on the strengths piece, the skills piece, the hopes
yeah, yeah.
piece.
And I think I would always say, because it's so much easier for me to say it than to do it, especially if it's a long established pattern of relating to yourself. I think the first step is actually acknowledging, actually going, this isn't, factual stream of, information coming through my mind. These thoughts aren't facts. These are actually, I'm talking to myself very negatively. So I'll often ask people to just spend a day checking out how you're speaking to yourself, and kind of noticing the tone of that, how it sounds. And then it is making a conscious effort to try and bring it back a little bit. Again, it's not saying it needs to be super positive. It doesn't. It just needs to be a bit more fact-based, reality neutral kind of. So, I got up today, I was feeling really, really tired, and I was feeling anxious, and I had that shower, or I turned up to the webinar today despite feeling how I felt. Doesn't need to be, again, doesn't need to be like that cheerleading, like you're great, you're doing your best, real positive. It can start off just more neutral. It doesn't need to be harsh and critical.
So no
Um,
high-fiving in the mirror, Niamh, then.
No,
No
I, well,
high-fiving.
you can if you want, Margaret. I'm not, denying.
No, but you know, I love that, just the simplicity of that, of just like, yeah, like we wouldn't talk to other people like that a lot of
Yeah,
the time. We're
yeah.
very, very hard on ourselves.
So harsh, and that can
Yeah.
really become more harsher with going through difficult times, And it's like when we go through difficult times, when we're feeling vulnerable and low, that's a time we need nourishment and a bit more nurturing and kindness. And instead it's like we, kind of, yeah, lambaste ourselves a bit, or
Yeah.
um
And
go
I think
on.
that's really good, just in terms of, just for, I love that acknowledging it first.
Mm,
Sometimes we're running kind of away from that noise, even though it's always there. Acknowledging it,
mm,
not necessarily confronting it, but just like, as
yeah.
you said, just toning it down. Does anyone else want to come in on that piece around shifting the focus? Áine, I'll come to you, and Sylvia, then I'll come to you next.
Perfect. So even Mike had spoken there previously about, diagnosis, or, even people's maybe mental health challenges, or, their emotions. I feel like, coming back to the identity piece, even the likes of, we often say or describe ourselves as, I am anxious, I am depressed. or a diagnosis, we might feel that it makes up our whole identity, but in actual fact, it's just a part of our identity. Or I'm just feeling anxious, I'm just feeling depressed. It's important to remind ourselves that, you know, emotions, particularly ones perceived as negative, you know, they're fleeting. And I think one way to kind of shift that is, I love the quote, "This too shall pass." You know, just reminding myself, even these emotions that I'm feeling now, they feel all encompassing, they will pass. And I think that's a kind of way to try and instill maybe a sense of hope, coming back to the CHIME framework, in how I'm feeling and how things can and will hopefully get better. Some practical strategies I think that are of benefit are the likes of positive affirmations. I think they can be helpful in kind of challenging our negative beliefs about ourselves. As Niamh had said, we are very tough on ourselves. Positive affirmations, they're known to actually change the neural pathways in our brain, because the brain can't easily distinguish between what's real and what's an imagined experience. So I think the likes of YouTube is a great resource to look at, you know, positive affirmations. There's the likes of certain cards. I have a couple here that are, you can't really see it now because it's blurred, but you know, some things that are tangible that you can have to hand, that you can say aloud. I have ones here that says, "You are enough always, progress over perfection, take it step by step." And these are just kind of prompts for us to kind of start to feel it, even though we mightn't feel it in the moment when we're saying it. I think they can help us along. Another strategy which I find helpful is gratitude journaling. I do love a journal, and a gratitude journal at that. It's often very difficult, and I feel we as humans, we have a tendency to sponge up the negatives, the negative thoughts, the negative experiences, and we kind of sieve out the more positive feelings or accomplishments that we've achieved. So when I talk about gratitude journaling, it doesn't have to be, you know, something really, you know, elaborate or amazing that happened, but it's kind of finding pleasure in the smaller, more simpler things in life, such as, I had a lovely cup of tea there today, or I didn't get soaked in the shower that was outside earlier at lunchtime. You know, so it's finding the pleasure in the simple things.
And it is
As
those
we,
small things on you that make up your day, really, isn't it? So
yeah,
it's important that we do, you know, acknowledge those little small wins rather than being overwhelmed by the larger ones of, you know, when will I actually be recovered? When will I actually be free of this? That's a really a really good piece. Áine or Sylvia, I'm going to come to you next, and I think because Niamh, I think, wants to come in on this conversation as well. So Sylvia.
Yeah, just referring there to that struggle, I suppose, that struggle in being able to look at strengths and the hopes and the skills. And I know there's no one suggestion, you know, that's going to fit everyone, everyone's individuality with it. But like the reality, you know, it can be so very difficult to focus, I think, and I'll come across this on strengths and hopes, especially, I suppose, if there are, you know, practical, urgent needs in life that need attention, you know, that are outside of self and the diagnosis, such, you know, a financial crisis and other issues. But what comes with the struggle, especially from the APU discussions, it's highlighted is, you know, low self-esteem, or individuals themselves don't value their own talents. Um, and they can be, you know, quick to dismiss and devalue their strengths, and the recognition, you know, and praise from others that see them. So I'd say look at how, you know, open you are to receive and accept recognition as well from others. Do you value it or do you reject it, you know, and why? I'm thinking of it was a very transformative experience for a member in one of our workshops one day. And we often use that icebreaker in our workshops to draw that person's attention to themselves, bring it back to themselves and their strengths and skills and positive qualities. And we ask that question, but the person couldn't express any strength. They couldn't draw on one. But it was lovely that two other peers in that group came in with the many qualities, you know, that they observed and experienced with the individual, and they could rhyme them off. So I think, you know, there's a key message there that we are often very limited in how we view ourselves for many reasons, not just when we're experiencing, mental health struggles, but to not, I suppose, give that power away by not giving the gravity to how others can tell us a lot about who we are and ourselves too. And then bit by bit, look at what is within our own power to start developing that higher self-esteem and self-respect. And the other thing, I suppose, acknowledging very quickly, I'll say, I know if you're waiting, is to acknowledge that people who do, feel heavily judged, they might experience kind of what's called, imposter syndrome, and might focus on believing that eliminating the weaknesses they've been told they have, that'll help them to fit in and be competent with others and secure in their identity. But there's a risk there with that, it could lead to molding identity for the acceptance of others and not aligning to that acceptance of self. So yeah, a lot comes up in the workshops with this, but it was a beautiful, beautiful experience to see others feed back to the individual what they saw in their strengths and their qualities,
And
So
that's
again,
the
it's
value of peer support, Sylvia.
yes,
That's
absolutely.
within that moment, and that's
Yeah.
having that connection with
And
others
it
again.
might be the only voice they receive that acknowledgement from and that witness from, so
Yeah.
it's powerful. Yeah.
And I suppose that you've just demonstrated there, you can have it from both ends in terms of people reflecting back you're less than because of your lived experience of mental health. But then on the other side, have the peer support of coming together with people with lived experience and sharing those moments. And they are absolutely beautiful moments, completely must have, that happens again and again. Thanks, Sylvia, for sharing that. Niamh will come to you, and then Michael come to you. And I know there's lots to get through. Again, I'll just say to the audience there, is any reflections coming in? And what about those practical suggestions that we've heard, like the gratitude journal, those positive affirmations, toning down, putting that negative self-talk into neutral? Have you tried them? Will you try them? Let's hear from you. We'd love to hear from you. Niamh, I'll come to you next. Thanks.
Oh, I was just like raised my hand when Áine was talking about kind of, the language, I am anxious or I am depressed or I am, and I know I remember someone, it was a poet, I think, was talking about how in the Irish language, it's like tá brón orm, so I have sadness on me. Do you know? So again, it kind of speaks to that, this too shall pass. It's here now, it's landed on me, but I am not sad. Like I am not depressed. Depression is on me, kind of. It's just a simple kind of, language piece, but it's it stuck with me. And then just around, I know you were saying, how do you kind of reframe or change that narrative that might be kind of stuck in your kind of self-image or self-talk? And I do think like peer support is massive, like even attending webinars like this or community groups that look at mental health, or just kind of, and being open with friends or family around that. Maybe there is a bit of shame or a bit of self-judgment, that I've taken on from going through this. And for some people, it might be counseling or, individual therapy is kind of, that it's really lodged, that negative self-image or whatever. So, there's, things you can do yourself, but there's also kind of external ways of helping as well. But yeah, I'll stop talking.
No, Niamh, that's absolutely brilliant. And what I'm finding really interesting about this is almost like it's not pushing away, it's just externalizing to some extent that
Yeah,
experience. So it's not wholly you, it's something that you're
yeah,
experiencing, but it's
yeah.
not you in the totality. And I think that's a really important message to have.
Mm.
I don't believe I'm going about to do this, but just came into my head that Taylor Swift song, which I'm not a Swiftie, by the way, but just to say, because I just think it's amazing that that song, what is it? The Anti-Hero.
Yeah.
It's me. Hi, I'm the problem. It's me. And it's that kind of, you can take all of that on you, and then suddenly you just become all that, and you just become your lived experience of mental health challenges instead of the whole wonderful, holistic, amazing person that you are. Please forgive me for quoting badly. It's a completely different age group demographic from myself, but I just think as a message, it's pretty. Yeah, I think we've all had those moments. Thanks, Niamh. Mike, I'll come to you next.
Yeah, and it's just when Áine was talking about the positive affirmations, it just reminded me of a woman who used to facilitate with us, and she had an adult daughter who was in and out of the acute unit. And like that, she heard a positive affirmation, and then she said, "God, this is fantastic," you know. And then over a period of time, she got it into her head, you know, this will really help my daughter. And so she started collecting them. And so she said, I was going to type them up and make a poster, and it was something that then she could stick on the fridge. And, you know, and this was an act of kindness from her for her daughter. And so she was in the kitchen one day. There was a conversation on the radio, and they were talking about mental health. Her daughter was clearly struggling. She was, and and they were talking then about what you can do. And somebody mentioned, oh, positive affirmations, you know. And with that, her daughter exploded. I've never heard that so ridiculous in all my life. Jesus, if anyone said anything like that to me, I'd go for him. And she said she just kept stum, said nothing, and got rid of them. You know, so I think it's about, you know, exploring what works, you know, and be open to the possibilities. And I think that's the thing. And you know, so, and there's a quote, we used to use it in our workshops before as well, and it was from Ernest Hemingway, and we know the Hemingway family, you know, suicide has been an intergenerational um, I suppose it's presented itself intergenerationally in that family. So obviously, you know, mental health challenges. But there was a quote from Ernest Hemingway, and he said, and it was, he just said, it was kind of, while many of us are broken, but at those broken places we are strong. You know, so never, because as I would say, it's like when I'm out in the acute unit, and I say, like, and I often use that phrase, like, kind of, in spite of everything that's happened to you in your life, you're still here. So what's got you here? You know, why are you still here? You know, why are you coming into this workshop? And it is that thing of to look at it. Um, you know, and I suppose, and again, just even here in the workplace, and I know, and I'm not speaking for Margaret here, but we often have those conversations around, well, you know, again, and this isn't one is right and one is wrong, because again, when it comes to your own mental health, you can apply this, because in the workplace setting, you can apply it as well, is separate the facts from the feelings. And, you know, well, yes, there's certain facts, but the feeling is different. And again, so that even helps separate it out and can give clarity to a point where, yeah, if I'm feeling this way, well, then look at why am I feeling this way? You know, because, like, now, I'm not saying in our team here, but somebody could come to me and say, I'm completely overwhelmed. And I would say, show me your product. And they could say, well, I'm staring out the window all day and I'm doing nothing. Whereas the person next to him could be highly productive, you know, and there's no impact. You know, so it's kind of, but that's what, so a person can be feeling a certain way, but not directly related to a fact, to, you know, so again, it's just, again, looking at it, and it's changing that perspective, and come back to what Niamh said as well. I think, like, that self-stigma, you know, that can be hugely problematic, because again, in families, you can get those messages, communication, you're not good enough, you're useless, and it feeds into the negative self-talk talk as well, you know. So sometimes it's kind of, it's very difficult to look at a situation objectively when it's subjective. And that, you know, we don't have that lens, because if you grow up in an environment and that's the only lens you see things through, you know, well, it's very difficult, you know, to step outside that as well. So where are the interventions? Where are the conversations that can be had for somebody to even to go away and think about it? You know, because sometimes when we're hearing it from the person closest to us, I get it at home all the time. Sure, if you can't change something, you'll just have to change the way you look at it, you know. But I suppose bringing it back to mental health, as I would say, if mental health, you know, challenges were, if it was easy to overcome, none of us would be here, you know. So it might all say, what we're saying might sound simple, but it's not easy. Yeah, you know. Yeah. You're muted, Margaret.
Sorry. That was definitely going to happen at some point. I do want to go to Niamh, but I just want to take you up on that point. And I've got a question that I really want to get to. But I think what's really difficult in those situations, Mike, is the trauma piece, bringing that into the conversation. I think that's very, if you've experienced trauma in your life, how you see yourself can be, it'll be very, it's sometimes quite difficult and challenging to do those kind of practical interventions, because you're dealing with something that's almost, it feels like baked in. That's just my 2 cents. I just want to, Niamh, I am going to come to you because I know you want to come in on this, but also I want to pivot slightly, because this is something we were actually speaking about just before we went on, and it does speak to that idea of roles and responsibilities, Áine, as well. So I'm going to come to you after, Niamh, if that's okay. So obviously, Niamh, come in on what we just said, but I do want you to kind of come in on this one as well. So Marion's just come with a question. So Áine said, identity is ever evolving. I would agree with that. I had an identity and structure when I was working. I'm now in retirement and in recovery, and I'm now trying to understand who I am in retirement and where my interests lie to give me meaning in life. And that's something that's come out quite a lot from our workshops. It's this idea of a role of my life is finished. Maybe it's a milestone of some kind. And now, who am I? I thought I was this person. I've been this person for years. I enjoyed being this person, but now that's gone. The landscape changed psychologically. The landscape's just, it's disappeared for me. Niamh, can you come in on that, and then I'll pivot to Áine, if that's okay. And any reflections on what we said before, because I do know you wanted to come in on that piece as well.
Um, just what I was going to, I put my hand up to speak when Mike was talking about the positive affirmations. Yeah, it's funny, I really have seen both sides of it. Some people are they think these are great and they really help, and then some people are absolutely allergic to, that positivity. Which is why I often say start with neutral and see how you get on, and you might believe that more. But in terms of the retirement piece, and what did you say? Was it Marion?
Yeah, Marion. And
Yeah,
again, I suppose it speaks generally to those
just
kind of
that
milestone
role.
roles in our life. When they're
Yeah.
completed, what happens next? You've seen yourself as something, this is who I thought I was, and
Mhm.
now I'm not that person. Who am I?
Yeah, yeah,
Is that something you see in the community? Is that something that you've seen has impacted on people's mental health, either acute or community?
yeah, both I would say. And I think, and I always would encourage people to first kind of acknowledge or validate kind of what they've lost, or they kind of grieve that loss of role. Maybe it could be with retirement, or it could be a child moving out, or it can be any range of things, or it can be kind of an illness, or a disability that's impacted on a person's role. um but kind of, yeah, acknowledging what I have lost and the sadness that comes up in that. And like Mike had said earlier, kind of trying to again reframe it as this can be an opportunity, and kind of trialing different things. What do I like? And I might not know, and there might be confusion, but this is an opportunity maybe that I can experiment with different things. What do I like? What do I not? Where do like what Sylvia said at the beginning, where do I feel most like myself? Like, what is it when I'm meeting friends and having, engaging in a discussion with them? Is it creativity? Is it with music? Is it, so I often use that phrase of, experiment with it. You don't need to know what is your new role right away, but just kind of being flexible and being open, and kind of, yeah, trying on a few different roles and kind of identities a little bit, and seeing what feels right or what feels comfortable for you.
And it sounds
Um,
almost like a little bit of playfulness there, Niamh, that you could almost have if you're
yeah.
coming towards that point in your life.
Yeah.
And the fact that Marion's coming, to this webinar today as well, speaks a lot. But it does come up again and again, that
Mm,
loss of identity because of a role has been lost.
mhm,
But that's really that's some great advice there, Niamh. I'm going to
mhm.
go to Áine on this, because I know in terms of occupational therapy this has come up, and then Sylvia, I'll come to yourself. I know you had your hand up. So just the practical side of that, because again, that occupational therapy, it's all about those roles and responsibilities piece, isn't it?
Yeah, and I agree with Niamh, you know, it's about allowing that time to grieve and to practice that self-care and kindness. It's a really sometimes, you know, people can feel that it's quite tough when they go from working and having that sense of structure, you know, Monday to Friday or whatever your schedule looks like, to then having, you know, nothing within those times. So I would agree, it's that kind of piece around that self-discovery, that exploration piece, but also reflecting on, okay, what did I enjoy about, you know, having that role? Was it the getting up in the mornings? Was it working 9 to 5? Was it connecting with other people? You know, is there a way that I can continue to implement that? What would that look like? Is it voluntary work? Is it upskilling and potentially doing a course that I've always wanted to do, whether it be, you know, a leisure course or productive? You know, looking around to see potentially what's in your local community that you might have an interest in. There are a number of, you know, free groups or courses that you that are free, but also that you might need to pay for. So it's, you know, starting small, figuring out what you've lost and what exactly was meaningful for you within that role, and is there a way to get that back through potentially something similar or completely different. I hope I've answered that
No,
question.
you have definitely. It's, I think that sense of loss comes out whether it's retirement or something else, whether it's just by experiencing mental health challenges or being admitted to an acute unit, or, you know, that there is a loss there. And I think both yourself and Niamh have highlighted that sense of acknowledgement of that grief. You know, I have lost something, but with that acknowledgement then comes the possibility of something else, of filling that with something. And I think that is from you know, knowing yourself, as you said, had taken those kind of stock in terms of what brings me joy. Like, shout out to volunteers like Volunteer Ireland, you know, women's sheds, those kind of things, men's sheds, you know, spaces where people can come together and start that discovery, that communal discovery of that. I hope, Marion, that's helped. Again, if you want to just reflect back in the Q&A, we'd love to hear from you or from anybody else with that. And Áine, I know, do you want to come back in there just
Yeah,
before I move on?
sorry,
Please,
Margaret.
yeah.
I
No,
just
don't be
wanted
sorry.
to
It's
say,
great.
you know, and I suppose that connection piece as well is really important to kind of see, you know, do you have friends or family members that, you know, or peers that are going through something similar, you know, maybe generate ideas from them or what they're doing. Potentially they're doing things in the community you would like to try out as well. And, you know, in terms of courses and things like that, kind of now's the time to start looking, because a lot of them will either start in January or September time. So if it's courses in particular Marion's looking to get into, I would say now's the time to start looking.
Great practical advice there, Áine. Sylvia, I'm going to come to you. Again, I'm mindful of the time as usual, and there is one last question I want to get in. So, yeah,
Yeah,
thanks,
very,
Sylvia.
very, very briefly here, but talking, I suppose, again from what the people that we meet within the workshops, and recently we have had a participant who is in this stage, and we've been inspired because, like that, we are always saying we're always learning, no matter what age we are, in the workshops from others, and she's in that retirement stage now. And think as well, just coming back to what Mike is saying, you know, it's an opportunity also. It's like to maybe to see it like a blank canvas where you get to create from again. But this particular lady really emphasized for her place was that connection to others, other women who are in that stage of life too, meeting up with them. Almost for her like finding her tribe now, because maybe she couldn't before too. So that hugely stood out as one of those, I suppose, ways to support yourself when facing those life changes, and again, connection and helping rebuild or redefine your identity. So just wanted to mention that as well. Very inspirational for us to hear these stories.
Brilliant, Sylvia. And look, at those stories are really important, as we say in the workshops. You know, take the learning, leave the, leave the detail. But really, thank you for sharing that. Again, mindful of the time, and I do want to do a bit of signposting at the end, and I want to Áine specifically to bring her in terms of a lovely self-paced guide that we have around occupational therapy. If it's something you know, maybe it's been offered to you or you considered it for mental health recovery, I do want to spend a little bit of time on that. So I'm going to come to every single one of you, and Mike, I'm going to start with you. So again, it's the one we always kind of end with. We are in the last piece of this, and it's the one piece of advice. Now, I know we've come lots of different advices here in terms of what we can do, but if you were thinking about one thing, one small step that somebody could do, or a little piece of encouragement for someone who feels they've lost their sense of self, what would you help? What could you say that would help them maybe believe that recovery is possible for them, and that they can rediscover a new sense of self? It may not be going back to that person; it might be somebody brand new. But again, it's just is there kind of, I suppose, top tip or one piece? And there may not be one piece, but if you can just the little
Yeah.
nugget.
Well, I suppose the nugget would be, considering the conversation we're having, and grief and loss has come up as well as the impact of mental illness and life-changing events, and it's like retirement. And it's like, as I have often said here, when, you know, at my age, heading for retirement, that like the older you get, the more losses you accumulate in life. And it's almost like perpetual grieving. And there's something about, well, you first of all, you must acknowledge it and then honor yourself, you know, and grieve the loss. You know, because again, for, you know, I can't speak for Marion, but as an example, like just, yeah, like this is painful. This is a loss. I am going through this and I have to process it, and honor yourself in that, but practice self-compassion. That's my tip.
Brilliant. Really well said, Mike. I love that. Sylvia, just next on my screen again, just the nugget, something deep, just that comes into your mind around advice or
Yeah.
encouragement.
My nugget is linked to Niamh for touching on it earlier. If very kind of watch the story that you're telling yourself, whether it's you meet, you know, setbacks or triggers, um, those challenges, just watch that story and utilize your reflection, you know, to see, are these setbacks and things, are they happening to me or is it happening for me? So yeah, be compassionate with yourself first and foremost.
Brilliant,
Thanks.
Sylvia. Again, compassion just keeps coming through. Áine, and I know there's a ton of stuff because of the wealth of your and Niamh's experience, but I suppose it's the one small thing that people can do right now if they're maybe in a difficult way around this.
I suppose the importance of practicing self-care. Again, it doesn't need to be overly elaborate. We kind of talk about occupational balance between self-care, productivity, and leisure. But oftentimes people say that because of roles and responsibilities, they don't have the time for those practices, but they can be small, you know, 5-10 minutes within the day. I think that really kind of helps to maintain or improve a person's feeling of well-being. And then when it comes to kind of rediscovering sense of self, it's about setting small, manageable goals. I could harp on about that now for the next hour, but it's the most important thing is to start. So that's what I would say.
And I love that on you start. And I suppose the other thing is if you do start and maybe you go the wrong pathway, take a breath, maybe choose another pathway, but always, you know, don't, because it's harder, I think, when you get stuck. Thanks for that, Áine. Just by the way, just Marion's got back there and says, thanks for feedback. It has been helpful. So that's great to hear. Thanks, Marion. Really appreciate it. None of this is easy. As Mike would say, sometimes it sounds simple, but it's never easy. It's something that always has landed with me. So thanks for that, and thanks for all of your contributions today as well. We're not finished yet, though. Niamh, just in terms of the nugget, if there is a nugget to be had.
Yes, I know. As you were going through, I was like, what's my nugget? What's my nugget? But what is my nugget? Well, I know I'm all about, like, again, I'm repeating myself, but validating and kind of acknowledging the loss and the pain, because I think we can often put so much energy into fighting against and pushing it away. Acknowledging it and kind of seeing, yeah, okay, this is hard, I'm struggling right now, what can I do? And I also, what I say a lot of the time is, you know, when we're feeling very low and we're feeling down in ourselves, we can often it's like we're trying to think ourselves out of it, you know, and we're sitting there and we're kind of going through and we're getting stuck in our head. But we often cannot, we'll never think ourselves out of feeling a certain way. We often need to do. So it's kind of, I'm repeating what Áine said, start, like just do something, you know, make a movement. You are not going to think yourself out of this, you know, maybe. So doing, kind of, yeah, making a start. And the other thing, very quickly, that you use the word playful, and I really like that word around this, kind of bringing a little bit of playfulness or experimenting or, you know, flexibility to that identity. And it's kind of, yeah, again, speaking to that word evolving, you know, identity is evolving. I'm going to stop. Many nuggets.
I could go on for ages. I love it. You know, the playful things, I think I've said this to you, Mike, before, is when did we stop skipping?
I know.
You know, I mean, it's that kind of
Yeah.
thing, and the weight and everything just kind of came on top of us, and you know, and lads, we're all doing our best. At the end of the day, that's all we can do. But I love that thing, acknowledgement thing, and acknowledgement piece. But then, you know, just try and maintain momentum. Just keep moving forward. You know, yeah, and sometimes we can't stop thinking, like the thinking won't do it. You can't think ourselves
Yeah.
out of this. That's really good. Sorry about putting pressure on the nuggets, lads. I mean, but they were all great. You get 10 out of 10 for nuggets in my world.
Thanks.
I hope you can still stay with us. We've just got a couple of minutes just to do some signposting, and then we'll say our goodbyes. As usual, we could be here all day. Some fantastic discussions, and thank you for all of your engagement. I just want to check, Mike, can you see that okay? The slides there, have they gone on the screen yet?
Yeah, on the screen. Yeah.
Yeah,
Perfect.
and they're not moving. Isn't this just lovely? Just bear with me for a second. I'm going to stop the share for a minute, and we'll try once more. Hang on a second now. No, it's not working for me, and I'm stuck. Hang on. Oh, is it sharing there now? Yep.
Yeah.
We're
That's
back up.
all. Yeah.
Great stuff. Great stuff. Ah, lovely. So, yeah, talking about doing stuff, and you know, one of the things you can do is actually go to recovery education workshops, and guess what? They're online. Brilliant. So if you have time on your hands that you can come, and obviously we've already mentioned, Niamh's mentioned self-care, Áine mentioned self-care. We have our self-care series coming up, parts 1, 2, and 3, in November. And you know, you don't have to come to all three. You can just come and go as you like. Also, the creativity for well-being one, which is workshop, which is fantastic to kind of, again, feeding into that playful piece. What actually do I like? You know, what can I do? And it's a really good one, I think, that workshop for, you know, testing the water, because again, it's that, when did we stop skipping? When did we stop painting? When did we stop, you know, all those things that really brought us joy? When did we stop doing art? Journaling for Wellbeing is there as well, and then my mental health, looking after me, so looking at how we can actually look after ourselves. Hunt Museum, we are back in there face to face in November. I think there might be a couple of spaces left, and it does fill up quite quickly, but if you have any problems, do send me an email. We're in there on November 20th, and first part is, of which I mentioned, Áine has, you won't be co-facilitating for this one, but has in the past, is a discussion around creativity, and the second part is actually the doing piece. You actually get to have some fun and be playful, as we said. CHIME webinar series I already mentioned earlier. We're back again next in November. My gosh, I can't remember. The time's just flying. Looking at finding meaning and purpose in life. All of these things are linked together. So it's just another continuous conversation around CHIME. Hope you can join us then. And now I'm going to, Áine, I'm just going to ask you to open your mic there. And I did mention self-paced learning. There is a guide there that we collaborated with Occupational Therapy in mental health with. Áine was fantastic in this. She did some amazing work on it, and it's one of my favorite things, to be honest. It's the guide there. It's an online guide introducing occupational therapy. Áine, I don't know if you want to just say a few words specifically on that, because I think it would be helpful.
Yeah, of course. So I suppose I had found, along with my OT department, that oftentimes people who are coming to the adult community mental health team mightn't have ever heard of occupational therapy before, or they might not know how to be referred to an occupational therapist. So we developed a guide. We co-created it with West ARIES. They were great in creating it with us, just to kind of identify what occupational therapy is and the types of interventions that we might carry out with a person in the community. And it's just really about that, I suppose, empowerment piece for clients coming in to advocate for themselves and to say, actually, occupational therapy, you know, I've seen the mic guide, it's something I'm interested in doing, as opposed to waiting for potentially one of the doctors or another MDT member saying it first. So yeah, we just thought it would be great as kind of a way of empowering people to play an active role in their recovery journey. So yeah, that's all I
Yeah,
think.
and thank you for that, Áine. And again, I'd recommend anyone, you can see there's other self-paced courses there, like Understand Acute Mental Health Services, Perinatal Self-Care Program. But I think with this one, if it's something that you find, you know, that this actually might be helpful, you're attending community services already, community mental health, definitely have a look. And I love that idea, Áine, in terms of empowering people. So thank you for that.
And can I
Again, if
just
you
say,
want, oh yes, please, you talk there. I'll leave the
it's
slide up.
on your website. That's how people can access it. It's on the West ARIES website.
That's exactly it. And there, that's our website there, midwestaries.ie. You can get it from there, and it works really well on mobile phones. So you can use that. Now, I know we are coming to the end. We are 1 minute past. Thank you for staying with us. I'm going to do a whip round of thank yous. But before I do that, I just want to say a huge thank you to the panelists. You've been absolutely brilliant. Thanks for having such a lovely, honest conversation around identity. We could be here all day. I'm just going to pass you through. Sylvia, you just want to say your goodbyes?
Yeah, a really, really enriching discussion today. Loved it. And yeah, I hope the rest of the series goes well. So, and thanks to everyone else on the panel as well being here today. Thank you, Mara.
Perfect. Thanks, Sylvia. Áine.
Yeah, so it was my first time doing one of these panel discussions, so thank you so much for having me. Yeah, and it's given me things to reflect on. So it was an eye-opening experience, and yeah, thanks so much for everybody who's tuned in and to my fellow panelists.
Thanks, Áine, and really, gosh, I thought you'd been on one of these before. You see, we know you so well. We're taking you for granted. It's terrible, but it's been brilliant to have you. Thank you so much. Niamh, if you just want to say your goodbyes.
Yeah, bye to everyone. Thanks to people listening, and thanks to the other panelists and everything. And yeah, I've done, I don't know, a few, definitely a few of these
Yeah.
webinars, and they're always, it's a really, like, I think Sylvia used the word enriching and kind of inspiring conversation, and it goes in lots of different directions, and yeah, it's really interesting to be a part of, and I can bring it back to my work as well, you know, hearing what other
That's
people
brilliant,
think.
Niamh. And as usual, you can share this with, you know, anyone you feel
Mm,
may benefit. And I'd say that
yeah,
to any of our attendees as well.
yeah.
And thanks so much, Niamh. And Mike, if you want to say your goodbyes.
Yeah, I'll finish with a quote from Van Morrison. He doesn't do
Are
interviews
you
that
trying to up
often,
me now after Taylor Swift? I think you
Taylor
are.
Swift. But again, this was an interview he did back in the 70s, and it's very rare for Van Morrison. And he said, "The person you are looking for, you already are."
Wow. 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 Fantastic. Lovely way to end. And on that note, I think just say thank you so much to all of you for coming today and spending this time with us. I know we've gone a couple of minutes over. Thanks for staying with us. I hope you take something from it. There's some really great gems there. Thanks to the panelists for their honesty and good humor. That's the thing. We
Mhm.
always try and have that perspective of, you know, of hopefulness. And I think that's what we brought today. Whatever you do, please be kind to yourselves, and hope to see you next month for Meaning and Purpose. Take care.